Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. Once again, I have to take to the TV because of the dastardly act perpetrated by the rogue state of Israel. During the month of the Ramadan, during which Muslims pray in the mosque and elsewhere, the Israelis decided to invade, to desecrate the mosque by going in and attacking the people who were praying. Obviously, the people who were praying were defenseless. They were not there to fight. They were there to pray. And yet the Israeli forces, with their boots on, marched into the mosque and started throwing grenades and killing a lot of people, men, women, and children. This is Israel. For years now, since 1948, we have seen repeatedly this kind of action by the rogue state of Israel. They have no respect for international norms or international law. They break all these laws as if these do not apply to them. Unfortunately, the big powers have allowed the Israelis to do this and have never taken any action against Israel, although it is possible that they have been committing crimes against humanity. This is what is happening today, now. For 4 days now, the attack on the Muslim prayers have not abated. More and more people are being harassed and disturbed by the Israeli soldiers. On the top of that, they have tried to seize the village of Jazara, a place where the Palestinians have been living for hundreds of years. They claim that this village belonged to the Jews 1,000, 2,000, or 10,000 years ago, and therefore they have a right to seize the houses belonging to the Palestinians and evict the occupants as if they have a right to take any property that they choose to take. All this is about their right to take places in Palestine because thousands of years ago they claim they had occupied these places. If on this basis, that because in the past people live in certain areas and therefore now in this day and age they can reclaim violently their former property, then the world will see constant wars because everybody would want to take back the land that has been seized from them in the past. We have to accept that the countries of the world have now been recognized with their own boundaries, and we respect them. We treat them as nations, but not the Israelis. They take the land belonging to the Palestinians and expel them. And even now, they do not allow the Palestinians to return to their own land and to reclaim the property that had been seized by the Israelis during the creation of the State of Israel. They have paid no compensation. But this is not just there, not just in the original state where Jews and Muslims live together. Now the Israelis are building settlements on foreign land, on land belonging to the Palestinians. This has never happened in the history of the world for any nation to build settlements in another nation and claim that settlement as being theirs. But this is exactly what the Israelis have done, and the Palestinians cannot even enter these places. This is Israeli justice, to seize what belongs to others as if they have every right to seize property belonging to others. This is what Israel is about. We would have thought that from the sufferings of the Israelis, of the Jews during the Nazi regime, when millions of them were put in concentration camps, that there is a feeling of sympathy for those who suffer. But instead of that, the Israelis now are inflicting the same kind of horror on the Palestinians in their attempt to seize Palestinian land. These people have not at all been affected by their past, and unfortunately many in other countries seems to sympathize with them and to give them support even when they commit acts against international law, such as carrying out a sanction or stopping trade between Gaza and the rest. Yes, it is true that the Gazans have fired rockets at Israel, but this is nothing compared to the destruction of Gaza by Israel, even if there is no provocation. They claim that they have a right to protect their land, but if they have that right, the Palestinians too have that right. They too can protect their land. We had hoped that when there was this proposal that there should be a two-nation solution where we have the state of Israel and the state of Palestine, but every time work is done towards that aim, we find the Israelis committing more and more crimes against the Palestinians. The world should take notice of this. It is sad that world leaders who talk so much about human rights, about democracy, about the right of people to choose where they live, these people talk, but when this is done by Israel, when the Israel breaches all the laws and the norms of the world leaders said nothing. They don't even blame Israel when Israel commits crimes against humanity. It is because of this that there will be no solution to the problems between Israel and the Arabs. I understand that the Arabs, the Palestinians have been condemned for so-called atrocities, but this is not what is committed by the Palestinians themselves. These are acts by individuals. It is unfortunate that these acts is based on, believed to be due to the teachings of Islam. Islam does not advocate violence or wars or killing people. Islam is for peace. It is important that we review the problem faced by the Palestinians in their dealing with Israel. At the rate that things are going, Israel is going to seize the whole of Palestine and declare it as Israel. For the Palestinians, there is no way they can fight a violent war because they are not sufficiently equipped to fight a war against Israel. Besides that, if there is a war against Israel, we are sure that the Western nations would help Israel defeat any attack against Israel. This was what happened when the Egyptians attacked Israel. The Western nations provided arms and supplies to the Israelis to defeat the Egyptians. Now, most Arab countries are reluctant to take any action against Israel. In fact, some of them have decided that they should have relations with Israel. Maybe this will enable them to lessen the attacks against Palestinians. But I am not convinced that this attempt to work with Israel will result in the Arab Palestinians gaining back their land. It is time that we consider new strategy in our fight for justice against Israel. It is important that we seek diplomatic recognition and we go into the realm of diplomacy in order to explain the truth of the struggle, that the victims are the Palestinians and not otherwise. The world seems to think that it is the Palestinians who are provoking action against Israel. But as the case is seen today, while the Palestinians are praying in their mosques, the Israelis took a decision to invade and attack the Palestinians in the mosques. People who are praying are not a danger to anyone. They don't carry weapons in order to pray. But at a time when they are very weak, the Israelis choose to carry out their dastardly act. I hope that the whole Muslim world would realize that there is no way to deal with Israel that can bring about a fair and just result. Muslim countries must back the Palestinians to the hilt. We know that they have not been able to fight against their enemies, the Israelis. But I am sure that with joint action by Muslim countries and also by those who believe in human rights and the right of the Palestinian, with them backing the struggle of the Palestinian, I believe that we will find a solution for this Arab-Israel conflict. It is not worthwhile for us to think only of revenge, of fighting because they have fought against us. It is important that we should have a proper strategy in order to achieve victory at the end. Fighting for the sake of fighting, for the sake of taking revenge, is not going to gain us anything. I hope that the Arab world, the Palestinians, should now sit down and think about a proper strategy to fight against the Israelis in order to achieve victory towards the end. I hope that the Muslim world will awake to the present situation, and I wish that we all would suffer less from the kind of roguish activities, violent activities of Israel against the Palestinians and against humanity. Thank you.